Up and I wound up with 6. So hello.
How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you? Hey, you got a fight over there in the corner.
A what? Sure do.
What is it?
A spider making a home.
Is that lovely?
So how's y'all's week been? Good, I hope.
Wonderful. Is that possible?
What? To be wonderful? Absolutely.
Pretty sure it was. Well, it's the middle of October. We got Thursday.
Yeah. And it's already the 12th of August. So that is crazy. So did y'all get me another VCR?
Yeah, it's right there on the table.
This one takes the tape,
And that push it back out?
eats it up a little bit, and then puts it back out. So you got to reach in there and pull everything
No,
out.
that ain't mine.
No, that one there was it was in the garage, so I told him to check it before he brought it over to
My
Yeah.
back's hurting today.
Of course, that didn't happen.
Totally this
That's
is the
cool.
house.
Wow.
As far as I know, that one does work, because that one came out of Mom and Dad's bedroom.
Well,
Great. Well, I'll take it home tonight. I was trying to get it all done before Caritha, but
No mercy.
couldn't do it.
Sorry.
That's ain't your fault. It is not your fault. Here I am using bad language on Facebook Live, where all the 40 people.
Well, my doctor's been reporting, and he won't fill out my paperwork because he said he don't do it. It's only LPs who do it, and he's reporting, and it's his job to do it.
All right.
Actually, I'll go back to work, but he's not letting me apparently.
So we are going to begin. We've got a few people already, and y'all are here, and that's all that matters. As long as you're here, it doesn't matter where here is. That's right. That's right. My very important people.
VIPs.
Yeah.
There's Roger.
I don't know. You know, I
I
just,
mean, consistently, like, we had like a pretty good group on Wednesdays. Like,
I know. I sent everybody a text this week letting them know we miss you. But
I know
Anyway.
I got it.
good. All right. Glad you got it.
I know.
All right. Well,
And everybody won. I didn't get one.
no, you didn't get one because I didn't add you to my roll yet.
Well, can I say?
But I
Are you
will.
ready to put me on the roll?
I'm just waiting to see how long you'll stay. It's been over a month now. I guess I can go ahead and add you on again. Every time I take you off, you show back up.
Don't take me off. I'm not leaving.
I don't know what all that means. Probably means nothing.
No, listening.
Not
Oh,
listening.
too bad. Baby.
Oh, y'all.
Baby.
My goodness, I'm looking like somebody drug me across a railroad track or something.
I got hot today. It did. I got hot
I was
today.
watching
man.
grass at 6:30 this morning.
Yeah,
I don't care if I woke the neighbors up or not.
I heard you.
Well, I'm glad I wasn't your neighbor.
Yeah, that's because before I left the house, I told him he needed to get up and take the trash to the road.
So, hey, I've had some people say, well, when the rest of the class is talking, I can't hear what they're saying. So, can you repeat what they say? So, this is what we're going to do tonight.
You want to yell real loud?
When you want to talk, let me know, and I'm going to turn this around and talk louder.
Right?
That way, I won't have to try to verbatim you back because I'm not very good at that.
One more thing. I was on the ESPN radio this morning. He said my name over live air.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it was nice.
Hollywood.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Is it your birthday?
Huh?
Is it your birthday?
No, I asked him a question.
Ask him a question.
Must have been a
What
good
did
one.
you ask him?
Is Ohio State Michigan coming to the SEC?
It wasn't about, no, they're not coming.
Hey, they talking about Ohio State, so they want everybody.
You didn't ask him a question about 1 Samuel? Oh, gosh.
Is that what we're at?
Shame on
We're
you.
in 1 Samuel chapter 4.
Pride should be first.
Yeah, this is a great section of Bible because there's so many things that we can look at, and we find out right away that up until chapter 4, everything has been centered on Samuel and the rise of Samuel and the demise of Eli and his sons, and all that comes to a climax in this. But Samuel's nowhere in the picture. He's not even mentioned in these 3 chapters. What is mentioned is the Ark of the Covenant and the Philistines. And so even God is not even mentioned by the Hebrews except at the very beginning, when everything seems to be lost and falling apart for them. Okay, so we begin immediately to see some parallels between these 3 chapters and the Exodus story in Exodus, and how God is always God is the simplest way I know how to say it. And regardless of if you are his people and are misunderstanding your relationship with him, or if you're his enemy and misunderstanding who he is, he always moves in a way to show himself. And that is what we find here, is that there's this irresistible, free, very dynamic God that is in control of his world. And that's what we gather from this. That's kind of the 30,000-foot view that I want us to kind of keep in mind as we move through. And then all the details that we come across are just as valuable, but they all point back up to that. When we get to chapter 4, your chapter 4, the first line in chapter 4, in fact, my Bible does it, and most commentators put that Samuel by his word and Samuel's words came to all of Israel. So,
Can I ask you a question? It just popped
Sure.
in my head when you started reading.
Yeah.
You're saying,
This is for Mary Ann. So
Mary Ann, I have a question. The overall picture you just gave for the first 3 chapters?
This is what I just gave was
Whatever
for
you just said.
4, 5, and 6. The first 3 chapters all dealt with the demise and the descendancy, you could say, of the priestly clan of Levi, of Eli.
Where did you kick in where Samuel is silent? Where is he silent and other things are coming?
After
Chapter what?
Chapter 3,
Okay.
at the end of chapter 3, the last line that should be a part of chapter 3 is actually the first line of chapter 4. So verse 21 of chapter 3 says, "The Lord continued to appear in Shiloh because there he revealed himself to Samuel by his word. And Samuel's words came to all of Israel." Then for the next 3 chapters,
Beginning with chapter what?
4, verse, well, it would be
Okay, I was in
1b.
the wrong chapter. Okay, then my question is simply this.
Okay.
The overall picture that you gave, where is Samuel whenever you said was fixing to take place? Where is he, and what is the significance of him not being heard of for 3 chapters?
Okay, that's a good question. So the significance that the writer, I believe, that the writer is trying to make is that God's man, Israel or the Hebrew people have kind of put God into a box literally.
Mm-hmm.
They think that they can do whatever they want with God in their lives, but as long as they have the box, the ark, then they can pull God out and put him up whenever they want, and he's going to perform for them like a magic charm.
So is Samuel still
Okay.
a little boy?
No, he's grown up now. He's, I don't know what the age would be, because the word they use for boy can be from little all the way up to
So
nearly
they were
grown.
in error, these people.
These people were in error.
Okay.
And so the writer, very cleverly, God's man has nothing to do with this, because God doesn't need him at this point.
Gotcha.
God's taking care of this situation because he doesn't have his people that are giving him the right due, the right relationship. And he has a pagan God and a pagan people that need to hear and experience who God really is.
And Samuel's on the back burner.
Yeah. Yeah, because when we get to chapter 7, that's the glory days of Samuel. Yeah, well, that's because these narratives fall out in really huge blocks. And so to take it one chapter at a time you don't get the whole story. So we're going to try to do it all at once. We may not get there, but so I'm going to read beginning with the second half of verse 1 of chapter 4. So it says that Israel went out to meet the Philistines in battle and camped at Ebenezer, while the Philistines camped at Aphek. The Philistines lined up in battle formation against Israel, and as the battle intensified, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who struck down about 4,000 men on the battlefield. Okay? So they're routed. When the troops returned to the camp, the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord defeat us today before the Philistines?" So, note, they don't give the Philistines credit for defeating them. They immediately recognize God wasn't here. And if God's not here, we don't have a chance. So if God doesn't show up on our behalf, he must be fighting against us. All right? It doesn't change what's going on in their heart. This is a strategy. This isn't a repentance and bowing before God. This is a military strategy that they're talking about here. Okay? So he says, let us bring the ark of the Lord's covenant from Shiloh. Then it will go with us and save us from our enemies. So the people sent men to Shiloh to bring back the ark of the covenant of the Lord of armies, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. So you may recall, as a part of the law, only priests could touch the ark of the covenant, and only priests could carry the ark of the covenant. All right, so that's what Eli's two sons are doing. But you also remember who they are. They're despicable.
How did they deserve to carry the ark?
Yeah, because of their lineage. All right. When the ark of the covenant of the Lord entered the camp, all the Israelites raised a loud shout that the ground shook. So here it is. They're all in this camp, and Phinehas and Hophni show up with the ark, and they start just yelling. Just screaming to where it's so loud and so thunderous that the ground begins to shake. The Philistines heard the sound of the war cry and asked, "What's this loud shout in the Hebrews' camp?" When the Philistines discovered that the ark of the Lord had entered the camp, they panicked. A god, or actually the word is Elohim, so it means gods have entered their camp. They said, "Woe to us. Nothing like this has ever happened before." And it must mean to them, because it had happened before. So here they are recognizing the power of Israel's God. Okay? And that even goes further than that. Woe to us, who will rescue us from these magnificent gods? These are the gods that slaughtered the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. So now the Philistines begin to make the connection. This God that is now in the camp of the Hebrew people is the same God that defeated the Egyptian gods when he brought them out of Egypt. Okay, which is pretty scary, because what happened? God sent how many plagues? 10 plagues, till he finally convinced Pharaoh to let the people go. And then, of course, you recall that later God hardened Pharaoh's heart and said, "I want them back." And so he goes running after them, parts the sea, people get across, Pharaoh runs in after them, and they're all drowned. Okay, so this is, the Philistines know this whole story. All right. Show some courage and be men, Philistines. Otherwise you will serve the Hebrews just as they served you. Now be men and fight. So the solution they have is the only solution that they know, and that is to fight. But they have a reason why this is so such a good option for them, they are ironsmiths. They were one of the first people in the region to be able to forge iron into weapons. They were the only ones that had them. Okay? The Israelites didn't have weapons with iron. You know, they may have had bronze or something, but no iron, nothing hard. But the Philistines did. All right? So they know that they've got the right technology, so to speak. All right? So the Philistines fought, and the Israelites were defeated. And each man fled to his tent. So this is, they bring God to the battlefield because, hey, all we need is to bring, they think they're bringing God. All we need to bring is the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield. God will be there with us because that's where he rests, between the cherubim. And he'll defeat these guys because we're his people. Okay? And we'll be victorious. Only they bring the ark out, and God does nothing. Does nothing at all. And the Israelites are routed in this battle. In fact, so badly that the rest of them just threw up their hands and say, I'm going back home. That's what it means. They return to their tent. We're done. I'm going back home. If we're going to be servants to the Philistines, we'll just be servants to the Philistines. Okay?
What was the goal in the war? What were they after?
We never find that out in the whole story.
Because pretty much it's closer to where they are than to Shiloh, right? According to the maps I've been looking at,
Yeah.
it's right there.
The only
APAC or whatever.
Why did people fight back then?
Spiritual reasons.
And to enslave other people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the deal. You just wanted. We're always looking where we don't have to work. We'll make the other guy work.
So it wasn't for the possession of the land?
Well, if you possess the people, you possess the land. Yeah. The novel, you're talking about land. The novel concept about people and land showed up during the exile when the Persians would capture people and then move whole populations of people somewhere else and move another people in. So they move people around.
It's a power struggle.
Yeah.
Same thing going on today.
Yeah. Same thing.
Power struggle. The guns against the small.
Yeah. Yep. So the Philistines fought Israel, and Israel was defeated, and each man fled to his tent. The slaughter was severe. 30,000 of the Israelite foot soldiers fell. There's some debate about that number, because 30,000 people in a city that doesn't have a wall would have been really unusual. So there's a lot of different scholarship about it. There's a lot of textual conflicts in Samuel, but from the best I could read, it's about 4,000 people. Still a lot of people to die all in one day.
I was saying 4,000 the first time and then 30, so it seemed 34.
Yeah. So it's just one of those textual note things that that no one has confidence in because of the sheer number that it is. Okay, then the ark of God was captured, and Eli's two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, died. So here we are. The prophecy's fulfilled, and they're down to just one judge priest. That would be Eli. Okay, the ark's gone into captivity with the Philistines. All right. So, and God is just kind of let it all happen. Okay, and so we think, well, we understand why this has happened, and here at the end of the chapter, we'll discover that I think it's Phinehas's widow understands.
Hello. Hi. Oh, this is precious.
She understands why this has happened, because God's glory has been removed, or so they think. Okay, and why has that happened? They had this they had this very primitive idea that they had to feed God's glory. Okay? And she realizes, and the people realize, well, they haven't been doing that. They haven't lived the life that God wanted them to live. But God's glory doesn't depend upon us. It's just that our presence in it depends a lot on how we respond to God. Okay?
But
He
how
doesn't
how he
owe us
responds
anything.
To us might
Yeah, he
might
doesn't.
be attached to it if we don't respect him, if we disrespect him, if we don't carry out his covenants and his laws, if we don't act, in a godly manner, then for sure he's gonna,
Absolutely.
I think in God's economy, if you do good things, you have good things. If you do bad things, you receive bad things. So if you
Well, be careful now.
No, think about it.
What did Jesus say about the righteous and unrighteous?
well,
Righteous don't inherit the earth.
it rains on both of them.
Unrighteous.
Yeah. Yeah. It rains on the righteous and the unrighteous.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, well you can't ignore that.
I thought he was
Yeah.
meaning a survival.
So
Well, I'm thinking not
the
so
concept
much-
that you're describing is karma. If you do good things, you'll get good things. If you do bad things, you'll get bad things.
Well,
That's karma.
more in the way of God's people than in unrighteous people, but more people that are working towards righteousness. It seems to me that if you're not walking with God the way that you're supposed to walk with, okay, so we have we have a lifestyle, and we go ahead and we change our lifestyle to a lifestyle that's more appeasing to God, that glorifies Him. Okay, and then we go ahead and we pray to Him and we commit to Him. Okay, but then we start doing things that that aren't like Christians. Okay, so it should be that if you are in Christ, then you shouldn't desire these things so much. But when you do desire them, it seems to come crashing down on you harder than it would for most.
If he has his eye on you, you're righteous. And then I'm presuming and assuming in my own thing that I am. But yes, he looks on me because he's trying to pull me back to him. So I don't think he looks, when he looks at all of us, he sees his creation. And he sees us all, want all of us to be in heaven. So I don't think there's such a distinction as we're trying to say that he doesn't look on the righteous. Yes, he does, because he wants the unrighteous, because he wants the unrighteous to come back to him if he left, like you said, if he left. So I don't think it's an equal.
If it depends on works at any time in the Old or New Testament, then we've lost sight. These guys believed that if they did the right things for God with the ark,
Well, that's
that he
understandable
would
in that
perform
era.
for them.
Wouldn't that be understandable?
No, because this problem was created over a period of time when they weren't worshiping God in the right way. Now, they didn't have proper priests to show them the way. And when that happens, a people can quickly drift away.
Okay.
They had lost sight of God. And so
But he hadn't lost sight of them.
that's right. And so often when we do that, we do begin to tell ourselves that we can perform our way back into His good graces. The character that will come up very quickly for us is David. God anointed him. Okay, and then everything that David needed, God provided.
He missed.
And then what happened? Yeah, he sinned gravely. And then what happened?
He didn't even repent for a year.
But then his heart did turn back. So that's, I think, is the key that we're looking for, is where is our heart in this? Had the people's heart been in the right place, this may have all been different. But their heart was not in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So because they didn't have what we have today, Jesus Christ,
Right.
They were on their own. You said
So-
they didn't have good priests.
So really, in this particular instance, they were using God as a graven image. They could march out the ark, and that would have been the same thing as holding up a staff with a two-headed monster on it as being our God of war, you know. And so we're going to go behind. That's what they were doing, and God said, "Okay, go ahead." Because I'm going to show you something, and I'm going to show your enemies something that they've never. They talking about they've never seen this before. They've really never seen what I'm about to do to them. It's going to be clear who is in control of everything that's going on, and at the end, who will be victorious. Because we see here after this, the idea in the Philistines' head is what? We've defeated their God. We got his box.
How come they didn't drop dead when they took that box? I thought if you touched the ark, you dropped dead.
That's for God's people. He had set them apart to be holy before him, not a bunch of Philistines that didn't get the message.
That's
So
the point
see,
I was making
it's not
earlier.
it's not the box that matters. It's the holiness that God desires from his people that matters.
So if you holy and you touch it, you're gone.
If God has chosen you, you know, he chose the Levites. They could touch it. We find out other people touch it. It's a bad deal for them.
That's why nobody found it. 'Cause every
Well,
time they touched it,
well, we're going to see some other things here too. So that day a Benjaminite man ran from the battle and came to Shiloh. His clothes were torn and there was dirt on his head. What's that mean? He's already in mourning. He's already ripped his clothes and he's tossed dirt on his head. When he arrived, there was Eli sitting on his chair beside the road, watching because he was anxious about the ark of God. Now, Eli knows that his sons are with the ark of God. So goes the ark, so goes his son. But he's more concerned about the ark than he is about his sons. It's almost as though Eli knows already because he's been told by God what's going to happen to his sons. It's just a matter of time. Okay. When the man entered the city, he gave a report. The entire city cried out, just like the Israelites did in the desert long ago before the Exodus. They cried out and asked, why this commotion? The man quickly came and reported to Eli. At that time, Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes didn't move because he couldn't see. So he's really old and he's blind. The man said to Eli, I'm the one who came from the battle. I fled from there today. What happened, my son? Eli asked. And the messenger answered, Israel has fled from the Philistines, and also there was a great slaughter among the people. Your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, are both dead, and the ark of God has been captured. When he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward off the chair by the city gate, and since he was old and heavy, his neck broke and he died. Eli had judged Israel for 40 years. So here he is, 98 years old. Everything that God had told him about his sons happened, but he hadn't warned him about this. For his whole life, and especially for the previous 40 years, he had devoted his life to the ark, to worship in the place where the ark was, to the presence of God amongst the people, and everything had been lost. See, he'd lost his work. He had lost the presence of God. He had lost his sons. Everything was lost, and in despair, he just fell over and he died. Broke his neck. Oh yeah.
What was the word that you used there, Pastor Mark, in that last sentence that you just read? Did you say
He judged Israel.
judged?
Yeah. So there, the previous book is called Judges. There was a series of judges. Eli was next to the last. Samuel is the last.
It was like the president.
The people would sin and rebel, and things would get really bad, and they'd cry out to God, and he'd raise up a judge amongst them, and he would kind of direct them in their life and show them how to live, and because the whole nation was to be a theocracy, to just live before God, let God rule. And when the world saw that God was ruling these people and how he would bless them and care for them and all these things, that they could share the world. They could share God to the world. That was the whole idea. That was what he told Eli. That's what he told him in the desert, that you're going to be a nation of priests for me. You're going to intercede for the world on my behalf, and the world's going to come. And then that's renewed again in the Davidic covenant, and then it's mentioned multiple times during the prophets. It's always been God's intention, but he chose early on to choose a people to do that through. Okay.
Special people.
Yes.
Chosen.
Yeah. And that's why he says, I chose you. You're not a special people. You're the least of everybody. You know? But I chose you. And so that's what makes you who you are. And then he chooses Jesus to do that, and he chooses us. So there's this constant relationship thing that's from the very beginning.
But all of that, from the beginning till now, today, it's the same thing. You either know God or don't know God. But he wants everybody to know him so that everybody can go. But the battle was from the beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
With our souls.
It's always been this way.
Yeah. Just different time, different people.
And it is, and it's nothing more than this. There's a God that is holy and other than us, that created us. And so that separation creates the chaos that we find ourselves in that relationship so very often. And without a mediator, there will always be chaos. And so Jesus, the writer of Hebrews, is so eloquently tells us he's our high priest. He's the one that mediates for us, is standing at the right hand of the Father, interceding on our behalf. That's how this happens. And those of us that embrace that and receive that, we're at peace with God. There is no more chaos. But so much of the world is still in chaos.
Do you think a president could represent a judge? No?
Not here.
Not here?
No.
I mean, they make final decisions about our future.
Yeah. Well, Paul says, that we respect them because God has placed them where they are. So we respect our leaders because God places them there. We can't see the whole thing that God is doing in all of this. Okay, but he knows, and so we do that as a matter of trust. Okay, so to not leave that, sometimes these leaders do things that we just simply are not gonna. They go against our Christian beliefs and values. So now we have to respect them, but we have to say we're not following. Okay, so that's like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego with the king, Nebuchadnezzar. O king, we respect you. You're the king, but we cannot bow down to the things that you're wanting us to bow down to.
Well, I feel like that's the way we treat a president.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about this president, but I won't. I think that he intends for us to have a godly president. Just like he intended the judges, not the judges were all good, like you said, the judges. So I think it's kind of
God
like
used,
down
but God used Cyrus and Darius and Nebuchadnezzar to do some things on his behalf.
His timing, in God's timing.
Yeah, and they were by no means not believers, but they didn't. So we have to keep ourselves open to who God is and how He's moving in the world. And the way that we do that is by staying close to Him. And that's our first and foremost job. As believers, we want to be near to the heart of God. That's one of my favorite sayings now. I want people to be near to the heart of God. I want that for people.
They claim a lot of people, preachers, out here They claim Trump is a Cyrus. Because God knew that Trump would obey him and not.
Yeah, well, could be, you know.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, there's some, and you can find similarities because we generally deal with one another pretty consistently through history. You know, that's why, and this I won't get off on this, but just this one. That's why the United States is so unique in the world because we do our best to deal with each other on the same plane. You know, and the problem that happens, the people become disillusioned in that because we put too much emphasis on Washington. If we put more emphasis on each other and the lives that we build together, then Washington would really have to come to us. But they've managed to make it where we go to them for just about everything. And that's not the way it was designed to be. But
Well, no, because
one day,
We're the bosses, they're just,
yeah, they're the bosses.
they work for us.
They're supposed to
They're
work
public
for us.
servants that deal with things on our behalf. You know, when you look at the way that the America, the original founders had set it up, us as regular working folks weren't included. You might think we were, but we weren't. You know, they figured that you know, we didn't have time and we were too illiterate for it. You know, so really only the elite people did it. That's why the electoral college was developed. Okay, to represent us for our own good,
because we weren't doing
by what their opinion is of our own good.
Well, it's because the states elect the president. We don't elect the president.
Yeah.
Do what then?
The states elect the president. That's what a republic does.
Finally, you gonna vote?
No, we ain't getting into all that.
You
There's
said
too much good stuff here to be getting off on politics.
Oh yeah, it'd be an
So,
argument we've already had.
Eli's daughter-in-law, the wife of Phineas, was pregnant and about to give birth. When she heard the news about the capture of God's ark and the deaths of her father-in-law and her husband, she collapsed and gave birth because her labor pains came on her. As she was dying, the woman taking care of her said, "Don't be afraid. You've given birth to a son." But she did not respond or pay attention. She named the boy Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel," referring to the capture of the ark of God and to the deaths of her father-in-law and her husband. "The glory has departed from Israel," she said, "because the ark of God has been captured." Well, so boy, you talk about, boy, this story went off the rails quick in chapter 5, right?
Everybody dies.
Yeah, and the glory's gone. Okay?
Ark's gone.
There's no priest, and the ark's gone. God's glory's gone. I mean, you couldn't paint a darker picture. Death is all around. Here we got this contrast between Hannah and the birth of Samuel and all that was great about that. And then you've got the birth of Phineas' son, the corrupt priest, and the whole circumstances around it. It just couldn't be more dark than what it is right now. Okay? These people are defeated. Their God's been defeated in their mind. And there's no one to take the priest's place. Okay? At least in view. Why? Because the writer has very wisely left Samuel out.
Well, it's good to say
Yeah.
what happened to him.
Samuel comes back. So here we are. Boom. Okay, the ark in the Philistines' hands. So here we begin to really see just how much God is. After the Philistines had captured the ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod, brought it into the temple of Dagon, and placed it next to his statue. So here it is. The idea is if there's any power left in this God at all, it's going to flow into Dagon. That's what they used to do. That was part of the thinking that they had. He's a defeated God. There's nothing left. So what little bit left of him, Dagon will get. Okay. Huh?
What kind of God was Dagon?
Dagon was a fertility god, they think a god of wheat. There's also the idea that Dagon was the god of the Baals. He was the father of the Baals. Okay, so he was a kind of a powerful, in their mind, he was a really powerful god, because the god of grain was the god of fertility, and fertility was a very, that was the thing. That's what you worshipped. There was no life without fertility. The crops didn't come up, babies weren't born, nothing happened without it. So they worshipped it. Okay, and yeah, so they carved out this statue and set it up there and said, "That's Dagon. That's our fertility god. We're going to worship him." Okay, sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Well, if it worked,
Yeah.
they don't even know if it worked.
Well, they're fixing to find out none of it worked. That's the point of chapter 5.
I mean, did they think that they were having children because of that?
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
We
But
know
now,
that.
we're going to get the rest. But here comes the rest of the story. When the people of Ashdod got up early the next morning, there was Dagon fallen with his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. Okay, so Walter Brueggemann points out that they got up early the next morning to go see. Would Dagon be different? Would the ark be different? It's almost like the women running to the tomb for Jesus. They went to go see what's going to be different, and he makes that comparison. But here's Dagon. He's fallen over in front of the ark. Not what they expected to see. So they took Dagon and returned him to his place. But when they got up early the next morning, there was Dagon, fallen with his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. This time, Dagon's head and both of his hands were broken off and lying on the threshold. So here's a God that he can't think and he can't do. And he's laying in the threshold of the temple, which Bob Utley says that it was not uncommon to believe. In fact, you've heard the old thing about not carrying your bride over the threshold and not stepping on the threshold. You ever heard that?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard like going through the door, but never about
Not stepping on the threshold? Well, that's part of the whole thing. If you step on the threshold, okay. So this is the whole thing that this is about. It comes from this. A lot of cultures did this, and the idea was in the temple, the threshold was where the holy began and the secular began and met. Yeah. Yeah. And so here is Dagon. Not only is he headless and handless, but now he's fallen out into the way of not even being holy anymore. He's in the threshold.
What they
Right.
call holy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what
Well,
did you drop?
actually he is trying to get away from the holiness of God, see? That's what God is doing here. He's telling these people, your God, in his swift haste to leave my holiness, has been decapitated and left without hands.
So what happens if the groom steps on the threshold?
I don't know. I never carried my
Might be
wife
what
across the
happened when
threshold.
I was married to my threshold.
All right. Only Dagon's torso remained. That is why still today the priest of Dagon and everyone who enters the temple of Dagon at Ashdod do not step on Dagon's threshold. A little bit of a side note there. All right. The Lord's hand. All right. So Dagon's hands are gone. But the Lord's hand was heavy on the people of Ashdod. Now the word here that's translated heavy,
They got scared.
it's also the word for glory. So glory means weighty. It means that you give much weight to something. And God's glory was weighty. You gave much weight to it. Well, the same word is used here. What has come upon the people of Ashdod is God's glory. And it's a very powerful force. And when it is in the presence of people, we should give it what it's due. And that's what happened before. See, the people were ignoring the glory of God. And when they called on him to do battle for him, Well, there was nothing for them to gain from that battle because they had lost a sense of his glory. We're not even looking for it or cared about it. See? Well, now his glory is coming heavy on the people of Ashdod. He terrified the people of Ashdod and its territory and inflicted them with tumors. The Septuagint says, and he also brought mice against them, and they swarmed their ships. That's a little add that the Septuagint has. The word also is used for hemorrhoids. Okay, same word. So we got some pretty colorful things going on here. Was it the plague that they were suffering and the nodules that come up on a person from the plague? What happens in the plague is your lymph glands begin to swell, and then your autoimmune system begins to attack your body, and you actually kill yourself as a result of the plague. Okay, your immune system does the same thing that autoimmune systems do today. It eats your body alive. Was it that, or was it tumors like described in some way, or was it hemorrhoids as a result of dysentery, which would have also been the result of rats, or that God just could have given them dysentery, the whole region. But anyway, it's all bad. Nobody wants to be in Ashdod these days. When the people of Ashdod saw what was happening, they said, "The ark of Israel's God must not stay here with us, because his hand is strongly against us and our God Dagon." So now look, they have become believers. This God does have power, and he's brought this upon us. So they don't become believers by what the Israelites had demonstrated to them in worship and all those things. They become believers because God's hand is upon them. Okay, the children of Israel became believers because God's hand was upon them in a very positive way. What did he do? I mean, he brings them through the sea. He provides them manna and quail. He provides them water where there is no water. It's only when they decide to disavow that relationship because they're a little uncomfortable that God says, my glory's no good to them. I've got to teach them what this is about. And so he's teaching the Israelites, because they've been defeated. They understand what my glory is about. It's certainly the daughter-in-law of Eli that was dying, and now the Philistines are beginning to figure it out. There's something real about this glory of God that we need to pay attention to. So they called all the Philistine rulers together and asked, "What should we do with the ark of Israel's God?" The ark of Israel's God should be moved to Gath. Okay, this is another city-state for the Philistines. They replied, so they moved the ark of Israel's God. After they had moved it, the Lord's hand was against the city of Gath. You can't outrun God, causing a great panic. He afflicted the people of the city, from the youngest to the oldest, with an outbreak of, guess what? Tumors. The people of Gath then sent the ark of the God to Ekron. But when it got there, the Ekronites cried out, "They've moved the ark of Israel's God to us to kill us and our people." So now the word spread, and they're beginning to understand it's gone from being sick to being slaughtered, being killed. So the whole country's getting a taste of the power and the glory of God. The Ekronites called all the Philistine rulers together. They said, "Send the ark of Israel's God away. Let it return to its place so it won't kill us and our people." For the fear of death pervaded the city. God's hand was oppressing them. Those who did not die were afflicted with tumors, and the outcry of the city went up to heaven. So God is certain because he's God. But the response that he wanted, he got. The people were crying out to God. The Israelites were crying out to God because they had not recognized and respected the glory of God. And now the Philistines are crying out to God because they did not recognize and respect and honor the glory of God. And people today, when they ignore and disrespect and dishonor the glory of God, eventually they will cry out. I think that's where we're at today. Does that sound unreasonable to believe?
No, true.
And the world is, especially in our country, resisting every day to the point of we can't cry out to God. We're going to burn the Bible instead of crying out to God. They keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing.
Well, that's the bad.
And
That's not
That's
us.
California side.
but we need, in the same token, our dependence upon God needs to be more defined.
They need to
For the
cry
world.
out. Cry
Yeah.
out and for God's
Yeah.
mercy.
The world needs to see the church define their reverence and awe of the glory of God and his hand upon us. The world needs to know what that looks like. See, God does these things because no one knew what the glory of God was. They had lost sight of it, and the Philistines certainly didn't. So God is in the midst of teaching a lesson about who he is, not about anything else. Other than Dagon, he's a joke. He's an imposter. He's a paper tiger. He's
Well,
nothing.
we replace God with idols. Don't yell at me.
Yeah.
Football.
Yeah.
Don't you say a word.
I'm at church before the Saints game comes on. It's alright.
You what?
I'm at church before the Saints game comes on.
I just don't
Yeah,
want you
and
to say no.
LSU plays on Saturday, so it's okay.
No,
I'm just saying that we have
Yeah.
replaced.
Yeah.
I'm just footballs because my boy's so upset he might not get to watch a football game. I told him it'd be good for him. And
That's what I said.
he put me on the car, by the way.
That's what I'm talking
He stopped the car and said, "Get out." My mark.
Wow.
All right. So I'm saying they had the ark, so we have God. I mean, those that are saved know God, know His glory. We know the Holy Spirit. So I'm saying, I still go back to the fact of what's been going on since time began is still going on today. So where we are today with all this chaos that's going on is the church has been sleeping. I'm not saying all
Yeah.
churches.
No.
I have been sleeping.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived a wretched life till I was 54 years old. I thought I was all right. I was Catholic. And I was on my way to heaven because the priest told me I was. So at 54, when I got saved, I mean, everything just changed. I quit all that stuff I did. And so I still was kind of into myself, making myself get right. Because, you know, when you come out of a life, I
Yeah.
So we are responsible, I'm responsible of all the people that God really had appointed to me. When I got saved at age 54, I was a good age to be then, I could have helped you.
He needs all the help he can get.
But I didn't, you see, I'm saying I didn't.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying. Yeah. And those opportunities that we miss in the past, we can never,
Get them back, okay?
that we would probably know about. But see, that's God's business too. He works those things out. He would never want us to feel guilty because He's already paid the price for that guilt. So He's managed those other things. The love He has for you is the same love He has for those that you missed, that He gave to somebody else and probably had to give to somebody else
Yeah,
and
because how
somebody
many
else.
people are like me that
Yeah.
they didn't have that
We're all like
intimate
you.
relationship?
Yeah,
and-
we're all like,
push
we
us.
all do the same thing. Because we pass people every day that don't know the Lord, and we've gotten used to doing that.
Not me anymore, honey. you're missing. What you're missing when you know Jesus and you don't do his you miss some blessings.
Oh yeah. Amen to
Beautiful
that.
blessings.
So at the end of chapter 5, at the end of chapter 4, we see that everything's just at its lowest point because the ark's gone and the glory of God is gone. Okay, because it's not with the people. We quickly find that God, as he did in Egypt, okay, he does battle with Dagon, which isn't much of a battle. He defeats him, no problem. So that the people of the Philistine people are not even thinking about Dagon anymore. They're just thinking about God leaving. They don't want Dagon back, but they don't want God there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely confused.
Yeah. So kind of like the same thing in Egypt. The Pharaoh sends the people out. The Philistines send God out. So just get out of here. Just leave us alone because we cannot stand against you. Now these are the people. They're the most technologically advanced people in warfare, and they can't defeat God. Okay, they have a God that is the fertility God and the father of other gods, and he can't defeat God. Okay, and so God, in control, declares who he is and that he is not to be denied. He is free to do whatever he wants, and he is not going to be denied. No matter what we may believe about the circumstances, he's not going to be denied. So, when the ark of the Lord had been in Philistine territory for 7 months, the Philistines summoned the priests and the diviners and pleaded, "What should we do with the ark of the Lord?" Now they're not even calling it Israel's God anymore. Do you see this?
The ark of the Lord.
Yeah. They've come to recognize there's only one Lord here. This is his ark. But we don't want him around because he tends to kill us and give us diseases.
You better not open it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walk inside.
Then they replied, "If you send the ark of Israel's God away, do not send it without an offering. Send back a guilt offering to him, and you will be healed." So, oddly enough, 2 of the festivals that are required for the Hebrew people is the festival where you offer your guilt offering or your sin offering, and the other is your offering for trespass. Okay, so it's like these guys understand what's proper. Okay, maybe better than the Israelites did before all this began, but they understand what they need to do. It says, "Then the reason his hand hasn't been removed from you." Send back a guilt offering to him and you will be healed. Then the reason his hand hasn't been removed from you will be revealed. Okay. They asked, "What guilt offering should we send back to him?" And they answered, 5 gold tumors and 5 gold mice, corresponding to the number of Philistine rulers, since there was one plague for both you and your rulers. Make images of your tumors and of your mice that are destroying the land. So this was not an uncommon practice either. This is a way of kind of reversing. If a king came into your country and brought war, and you settled a truce so that he didn't kill any more people, then the thing that he may have desired, you would make a golden image of it and give it to him, and that was kind of a token.
Okay, at first when you was reading that, I thought maybe they had people with golden tumors and golden rats running around.
Well, no, that's not it. Then it says, "Give glory to Israel's God, and perhaps he will stop oppressing you, your gods, and your land." So here we have this glory thing, the very thing that this has been all about. Then he says, "Give glory to Israel's God." Give him the weightiness that he deserves, the respect that he deserves. He's proven himself to you, and so you need to do these things. Why harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened theirs? When he afflicted them Didn't they send Israel away and Israel left? So now they've gone back. The Israelites never bring up the Exodus story, but the Philistines bring it up twice. Okay? So he's reminding them.
So they knew better.
Oh yeah, this God is relentless that you're dealing with. Okay, you don't want to end up like the Egyptians. But by the time that was over, there was hardly anybody left. Okay? So he's run these priests of their sorcerers, their prophets, or whatever you want to call them. What does he call them? Diviners. Summon their priests and the diviners. Now then, prepare 1 new cart and 2 milk cows that have never been yoked. Hitch the cows to the cart, but take their calves away from them and pin them up. Take the ark of the Lord, place it on the cart, and put the gold objects that you're sending him as a guilt offering in the box beside the ark. Send it off and let it go its way. Then watch. If it goes up the road to its homeland toward Beth Shemesh, it is the Lord who has made this terrible trouble for us. However, if it doesn't, we will know that it was not his hand that punished us. It was just something that happened to us by chance. So this is the thing. They understood this. All right? You send 2 cows, never been under a yoke. That was part of the Hebrew law about sacrifice. Put it on a new cart. So the wood of this cart had never carried anything before. So they understood the uniqueness of the ark and that it was holy. And so nothing that had ever been used for another purpose should be used to carry the ark. And then the thing with the cows, see, this is interesting. Because they get 2 cows that had just calved. Okay? So a cow doesn't want to leave its new calf. She's going to stay right there with it. So they're thinking, okay, we're going to test God a little bit here. If all this happened because God did it, then God will control the cows and they'll go on home to Beth Shemesh. Okay? But if this was just some fluke thing that happened to us that he really didn't have anything to do at all, then he's not going to direct the cows and they'll come right back around and go back to their calves. See? So that was the thinking. Yeah. That's the best these diviners could come up with. Okay, a little agriculture, animal husbandry going on here, but that was about it.
Kind of like the pilgrims. Well, if we dunk them in the water and hold them there for 3 minutes and they don't die,
Yeah.
then they're probably evil.
Yeah.
So we burn them.
So the men did this. They took 2 milk cows, hitched them to the cart, and combined their calves in the pen. Then they put the ark of the Lord on the cart, along with the box containing the gold mice and the images of their tumors. The cows went straight up the road to Beth Shemesh. They stayed on that one highway, lowing as they went. Don't know why they put that in there, but it's there. I don't know why cows low. I don't even know what lowing is. I've sung it all my life. The cattle are lowing, the poor baby waits. So I guess lowing means some kind of song, or whatever. Anyway, it must be something of contentment. That's all I can figure.
I believe you don't know what they mean.
I know. I've never even thought about it until I was reading today, and I should have looked it up, but I didn't.
Ask your phone, Kevin.
So anyway, they're lowing as they went. So I guess they're at peace with what's going on.
I never thought about it.
See, I'm not the only one never thought about it.
Thought they were-
They never strayed to the right or to the left. This is a common euphemism for saying we're following the will of God. We never strayed from the right or the left. The Philistine rulers were walking behind them to the territory of Beth Shemesh. The people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting wheat in the valley, and when they looked up and saw the ark, they were overjoyed to see it. The cart came to the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stopped near a large rock. The people of the city chopped up the cart and offered the cows as burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites removed the ark of the Lord along with the box containing the gold objects and placed them on the large rock. That day the people of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices to the Lord. When the 5 Philistine rulers observed this, they returned to Ekron that same day. All right. So the ark is back, and the first thing they do is give God the glory He's due.
And use those cows.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And the wood from the cart.
So what do you think they were doing without the ark? I know it must be in here. The people that lost the ark.
Well,
How are their lives progressing?
During this time, we don't have any backstory as to what was happening, but they were without the presence of God.
So I wonder how they were
God's home.
being good.
In fact, we don't even read about Shiloh, I don't think, anymore in 1 Samuel. It's like when the Philistines took the ark, they destroyed Shiloh, and so there's no holy place left. There's just everything probably was in disarray and confusion and hopelessness. And then here the ark shows up. They don't know why yet, you know, but they know that they're discovering again that it has nothing to do with victory or defeat as to why God is with them. God's with them because he's free to be with them, and He wants to be with them, and so He made it happen that He is with them. And that is a lesson for us. There are days that people, you may not be one of them, but I am. There are days when I am not the best God person that I need to be. I get frustrated and I lose my patience and I become angry and I just want to go crawl up in the bed and put my head under the covers and turn off everything and leave me alone. That's not a very good day. Now that doesn't sound like anything horrible before God, except that every bit of that is me saying to God, you can't handle this. I'm going to handle it the only pitiful way I know how, and leave me alone about it. Okay, that's not good. And God still says, Mark, I'm going to be with you because I choose to be with you. And because I told you I'm going to be with you. I don't care what you think about what you're doing or any of that.
Right.
And I may not be able, He may say to me, I can't do a thing for you right now.
That's right.
Because your heart is a mess, your mind is a mess, but that has nothing to do with the fact that I'm here.
That's
Because I am free to be here. And when we discover that love is free, we really begin to get a more consistent understanding and present understanding of God.
So
Because see, He's free to do what He wants, but what does He choose to do?
not help you. I mean, He's helping you, but He's not going to say, "Well, let me take you by the hand and put you over here. You feel better."
He stays with me.
Yeah.
It's like, if you do this and go over there, you'll feel better. Okay, I'm gonna show you where to go, but you gotta go there. You know.
I get my own pity party, and
Sometimes it's fun.
you know, and God says, okay, I'll sit here with you. We can't do much, but I'm still here with you because I'm free to do it, and because I love you.
So you're basically hearing from Him, even though you're having a pity party.
I just know that. That's what faith is. See, and so I know that, and it doesn't make me feel any better about who I am. And it may not, in the immediate sense, make me feel any better about God being who He is at that moment. But it always is reassuring to know that He is free to do whatever He wants with me, but His love is also free to do whatever He wants with me. And that's some of what He's saying here to us. See?
Mm-hmm.
This is more than just a story. This is God overcoming all the other gods, overcoming my sense of having to have Him as my lucky charm, or in some rote, mechanical, legalistic way that I'm going to offer God out there and He's going to take care of me because He made a promise He would. He made a promise to these people He was going to take care of them, and He is taking care of them. It's just some things that happened in between the promise and where we are right now. He had to do some things differently in His care for us. So you care for your kids, but you're not going to continue to let them play in the road because, I just want my kids to be free and to do whatever they want to do. So they're out there in the middle of Highway 63, and if it gets run over, well, at least they knew that I gave them the freedom to do whatever they wanted to do.
Wasn't compared to.
Because isn't that what it's all about? It's just being free.
No, it's a real word for
And
it.
then,
Oh,
yeah.
Let them touch the stove.
Or the child gets hit and maimed, and they look at you and you say, "Why weren't you there to protect me?" Well, I'd already told you not to go on the road. Why did I need to be there to protect you? See, that's kind of how we do with God a lot of times. And none of that is relational. All of that is very mechanical and putting roles and relationships in boxes so we use them like we want. And none of that's what God's seeking for us. And so when I say that His glory is what He wants for us, we have to give that its due every day, all day, because He's present with us all the time. Because He's free to be present with us.
is that saying that when our child goes astray, you know, when I was raising a couple of my kids went astray,
Yeah.
and there was nothing you could do to sway them.
Yeah, so you just gotta,
So but you're there
yeah,
when they're delivered.
because it is you are free to be there. But when are you not free to be there? When you judge, when you do all these different things that say, okay, because I'm going to behave toward them this way, I cannot be free to love them.
Right.
Okay, but God doesn't judge. He just says, I'm going to love. You've got some things to work out with me, and it's not going to be pleasant, but it doesn't change my love. And that's what we see here. And when He returns, the first thing they want to do is give Him the love that they're able to give Him. Now, I only know one way, and that's to offer the cows as a sacrifice. See, the Philistines kind of send this offering of the gold, really like a trespass offering. We've trespassed against God. We took Him from His people and made Him our own, and He didn't like it one little bit. And this sacrifice is more like the one of atonement and forgiveness that they're offering to Him.
Of course, they don't have Eli's sons to stick a fork in it, huh?
What's that?
They don't have Eli's sons to stick
Yeah,
a
that's
fork
right.
in
Not
it.
have to worry about that anymore. It says, in fact, as a guilt offering to the Lord, the Philistines sent back one gold tumor for each city: Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. The number of gold mice also corresponded to the number of Philistine cities of the 5 rulers, the fortified cities, and the outlying villages. So there's some idea here. Was there 5 mice, or were there more than 5 mice? At this point, it doesn't matter. They're offering a guilt offering for the whole nation of Philistine. The large rock on which the ark of the Lord was placed is still in the field of Joshua of Beth-Shemesh today. So that gives us a clue that this was written much later, and it's looking back on this instance. God struck down the people of Beth-Shemesh because they looked inside the ark of the Lord. So here we go. All right. Heretofore, it's been in a temple in Shiloh, and nobody's been able to go in but Eli and his sons. And so now, here it is out in the open, and they said, hey, let's go have a look. You know? And God says, ignorance is no excuse. That's an affront to my holiness. You can't just treat me as a curiosity. And that's what's really comes across in this for me. We can't just treat God as a curiosity, as an intellectual exercise or an intellectual curiosity about our life.
And our convenience.
Yeah. And a lot of the world treats God as an intellectual curiosity. And they wind up explaining Him away, because when you start doing that, you lose the glory that He is. He struck down 70 persons. The people mourned because the Lord struck them with a great slaughter. Okay, so this is reminding us too of Phinehas and Hophni, and then what happened in the desert when the ark was mishandled, and then also later David's priests mishandle it, and they fall dead. So nothing changes.
So we did that.
because his glory doesn't change.
I said,
Okay.
so they did die from touching it.
Yep.
Just not at that particular time when it was being delivered.
Yeah. Yeah. The people of Philistine touched it. They didn't die because they weren't God's chosen people.
Mm-hmm.
They knew nothing of his glory other than the backside of it, the destructive side of it. God had allowed the people of the Hebrew people to experience the glorious side of his glory, so to speak. The front side, how Moses asked to see God's glory, and he says, I can't show you my glory, but I'll show you what? My goodness. And that's what the people experienced, was God's goodness. That was the glory that was revealed to them. But the glory of God that was revealed to the Philistines was tumors and sores and death, because they weren't meant for the other. God had chosen the people for that. Now, how would the Philistines ever experience the goodness of God? God's plan hasn't changed. The Israelite people were to show God's goodness to the world. They were to be his priest to the world. And in the same way, how is the world today going to know the goodness of God? That's the church's job. That's the mission of his son. And we're on mission with him. So it says, the people of Beth-Shemesh asked, who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? To whom should the ark go to hear? They sent messengers to the residents of Kirjath Jearim, maybe, saying, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and get it. So the people of Kirjath Jearim came for the ark of the Lord and took it into Abinadab's house on the hill. They consecrated his son Eleazar to take care of it. And that's the end of this particular episode of the ark narrative. That was it. So the ark came to be in Eleazar's house, and it stays there for a long time till David goes to get it. Yeah, that's when David goes and gets it, and dancing and all that business. And Michael gets all upset with him for dancing in front of the ark, and so after this, see, things really begin to start rolling, because the next thing we find out is the people, after we get through chapter 7, which is Samuel's really golden chapter, it deals a lot with him. But in chapter 8, the people start, wanting a king. And God says to Samuel, don't think that they're rejecting your ability to judge them and to lead them. They're rejecting me. Mm-hmm. And that's when you have a huge turning point, because up to then, God had really been patient with their unfaithfulness, But now they're demanding something else that they've never demanded for. And then we'll begin to see a whole change. So we start at the beginning. We talked about how God was working to bring some changes about in his people, and we've already seen that it's not always pleasant, and we're going to see that some more before we finally get to David, of course, where that's kind of the apex where he makes a new covenant with David and with the people. And then we begin to see the ascent of the priest king, Jesus. But look at all that happens underneath while that's having to come to pass. And it's because the people still aren't able to recognize and appreciate and strive for the glory that God has provided until Jesus.
Yeah.
And then how do we recognize it? See, we don't recognize it in Shekinah and all those things that they kept looking for. We recognize it as a sacrifice made on our behalf. That is living. It's forever. Finally. Because obviously the other sacrifices weren't doing a thing for them. In fact, it made things worse for them. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
That's it. It was good. You
Good
see
deal.
things that I've read this many, many times and been in many, many studies, but